Corla. Minister, this question and indeed a number of others that are before you today relates to capacity of schools across North County Dublin, the shortage of places and the deterioration of accommodation. Now, I have to say I've been a public rep for a long time and I have never seen this issue raise its head as much as it does now. We try and deal with one area, another one pops up. Of the 16 major projects for the area, only 2 are actually at the on-site stage. On top of that, we've had the problem of Ardgillan and all of the other issues as well. Minister, it is unsustainable in a growing area and we need a serious strategy to deal with these concerns.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman, and just to thank the Deputy as well, and also to acknowledge her point that this is an issue. I walked down the corridor and I'm meeting deputies and senators from North County Dublin, and it's the only issue that I'm coming across from them, and it is an issue. In order to plan for school provision and analyse the relevant demographic data, my department divides the country into 314 school planning areas and uses a geographical information system using data from a range of sources to identify where the pressure for school places across the country will arise. With this information, my department carries out a nationwide demographic exercise to determine where additional school accommodation is needed at primary and post-primary level. As the Deputy will be aware, my department recently announced plans for the establishment of 42 new schools over the next 4 years, 19 to 22, including 6 new primary and 2 new post-primary schools to be established in North Dublin. The 4-year horizon will enable increased lead-in times for planning and delivery of the necessary infrastructure. In addition to the new schools announced, there will be a need for further school accommodation in other areas in the future. Based on the current analysis, this need can be addressed through either planned capacity increases in existing schools or additional accommodation or extension to existing schools. Approximately 40% of extra school places are delivered by extending existing schools. The requirement for new schools will be kept under ongoing review and in particular would have regard for the increased rollout of housing provision as outlined in Project Ireland 2040. Now, I know it's an issue here that it's the here and now. What happens today, what happens in September, what happens in terms of enrolment. I just want to say to the Deputy, this is something that we're working very closely on, and I'm working very closely on with my officials to see how we can ensure that, where possible, expedite whether it's land acquisition, whether it's looking at putting temporary accommodation in, but also looking at ensuring that we have basic needs for students come September next year.
Minister, that it's not working. Now, you saw the day that was in it yesterday, and yet yesterday parents, teachers, students from St Joseph's Secondary School in Rush organised a protest in the town from their existing school to the field where there's supposed to be a new site being delivered. A school which is going oversubscribed this year by 140 students. They were outside the Dáil earlier this term, so while it's incredibly useful education for them in the need to protest to get things delivered, they shouldn't have had to do that. What's the answers for them here today? And I appreciate you've outlined the method that you're using, but what we're here to tell you is that it's not working. The situation is critical for that school. It's critical for St Malagos in Balbriggan, which we've discussed with you before. 58% of the students in 20-year-old crumbling prefabs in weather like we have now. It's at the project brief stage, even though it's been in the pipeline for so long. St Michael's House in Skerries, same situation. We've been told it's a priority, but you haven't even got the site yet. So the system is broken, and the people on the ground and the young people whose education is time sensitive, let's face it, have to be addressed in a much better way.
You will have a final minute, Minister.
Yeah, look, politicians, we all live in the here and now, in the present, and certainly when there's protests and when there's young people protesting and they want, which they feel is the right to have accommodation in the here and now, that's a challenge that we all face. There is a drive now on to acquire the site in St Joseph's. It is in the 6-year plan. It's in the 16 to 21, 2021 plan. and that money is ring-fenced. The capital money, there's no question of this not happening, but obviously it's how we move this enormous challenge forward onto the time constraints of pressure. And it's also, we have to take into consideration in North County Dublin the enormous explosion of housing. And I know it's a big debate in this House all the time that we're not building enough houses and the government's not doing this and not doing that. But in North County Dublin, the explosion of accommodation in the last 5 years is obviously a factorial in these numbers increasing. But that's not an excuse for not doing things. My priority is to ensure that I voice the voice that you're making here today and your colleagues when they approach me in North County Dublin. But certainly, when I speak to my officials in the building unit, I'll be certainly ensuring that we keep this very much on the radar and whatever. And like we are putting in you mentioned St Joseph's, 2 science laboratories, 1 technical graph design communication graphics room and 1 general classroom. That has been approved as an interim measure, but it's getting the site and the acquisition of the site is the big one.
Another minute. Final comments, Deputy.
The problem, Minister, is the population and growth explosion didn't happen in the last 5 years. It happened before that. And those children who live in that community, in the growing population for 20 years, are now in school, not just primary, they're actually in secondary school as well. So we have the logjam, not to mind the people you're talking about, coming on stream. So it is critical. And I suppose the point we're trying to make is the system is broken. Because when the issue of St Joseph's, as an example in Rush, has been long flagged, it's not that they're on the streets today or last month, they saw this coming and ye were warned. It was flagged, if you like. But when the issues have been raised either here or in the local authority, we're told in here, oh, the local authority is dealing with that, they're out looking for a site. When the councillors raise it at the local authority, they say, oh, no one from the department has come near us looking for a site at all. And meanwhile, it's the kids and the parents who are out in the street. That example, or that story for St Joseph's, has actually been replicated in other areas with St Michael's, in Skerries and the other schools as well. I didn't even get a chance to address Swords, the town with a population approaching 40,000, where there's a critical schools problem, and I have another question down about that later on. The system is broken, Minister, and the kids and the parents out in that rain needs more than the system that's there now. We need to really look at this.
Minister.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's no solace in repeating back to the Deputy what I've said already. Like, obviously, there has been a growth of population, as you pointed out, over the last 10 to 20 years. But our GIS system is also factoring in future planning, recent houses built and estates built in the last five years, but also future planning. And that's why we've identified in the new 42 schools nationally, and there's obviously a need here, there's a gap here, and it's something that I'm very conscious of, and I will continue to liaise with my colleagues in regard to this matter. But obviously, it's important that we keep the pressure on and keep the focus on in terms of land acquisition. And you're right, there are issues in Skerries, there's issues in other parts of North County Dublin, and the number of school planning areas. I have a list, I don't know how many I have here, but including from Beaumont to Whitehall, Swords, Scribblestown, Portmarnock, Malahide, Donabate, Donemead, Castleknock, Carpenster. So there is an explosion here in terms of population that we have to deal with, and obviously I'll certainly be keeping this as a priority.